Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the game review, Nottingham Forest 2, Everton 2 at the City Ground on Sunday. A game which very much felt like a defeat for me, and I know there's positives to take out of this game. It's a draw away from home. It's another point on the board, which ultimately, in the situation that Everton are currently in and currently find themselves in, every point matters and every point is important. But I just still, 2 days later, I sat here and we done the instant match reaction on Sunday and I spoke about how I was feeling about this performance and feeling about this result and how that, my thoughts and feelings may have been impacted by the fact that I was tired or I'd had a long day or I was a little bit hungover, and maybe that was why I was looking at this game of football in such a negative light. But it's almost 48 hours later now and I still can't seem to look at this game, with anything other than disappointment for me. And I've been thinking about it over the last 24 hours or so, and I'll be brutally honest with you, I felt worse, and I don't mean physically worse as in hungover and feeling sick, but in terms of a feeling after a football game, I felt worse leaving the City Ground on Sunday than I did leaving the Emirates on Wednesday, and I'll tell you why. Now, I'm not in any way, shape or form saying I was happy with a 4-0 defeat at Arsenal on Wednesday night. It was an absolutely shocking performance. It was a shocking defeat. It was a shocking result. It was a really, really, really poor display by Everton, and especially considering, thousands of Blues had travelled up there on a Wednesday night, most of whom were, in work the next morning, and Everton decided to put in a display like that. It wasn't good enough. However, and again, I don't mean to say this to sound negative or to sound defeatist or to sound like I'm lowering the standards of the football club, but I don't think there was many Evertonians that quite expected us to go and win that game against Arsenal at the Emirates. Now, of course, I don't think there was many that expected us to lose 4-0 and lose in the manner that we did, but, you could lose 1-0, you could lose 3-0, you could do what Manchester United did and lose 7-0. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter by how many you lose by. If you lose a game of football, you lose a game of football. Now, okay, goal difference comes into play and stuff like that, but my point is I didn't really expect Everton to get anything out of the game against Arsenal, and we didn't. Now, again, I was disappointed and I was upset and I was frustrated, but, when I was on the way to the game, I wasn't really expecting much, so to come out of it with nothing, again, I got over that pretty quickly. Leaving Nottingham Forest's ground on Sunday, and still, as we do this live stream currently at 4:30 on a Tuesday, afternoon, 2 days later, I still feel really, really frustrated and really, really annoyed about this performance, because not only were we ahead twice in this game, not only were we in a winning position twice in this game, we were playing against a team that aren't particularly good. Now, okay, Everton aren't very good at the moment, and I feel like I need to sort of say that every time I criticise an opposition team. I feel like I need to sort of caveat it by saying, well, Everton aren't very good either, but Nottingham Forest are really, really, really poor, and I felt Nottingham Forest were really, really poor for large parts of that game on Sunday, especially in the first half. And in the second half, other than the moments of attack, which were pretty much gifted to them by Everton, I just didn't think they had an awful lot about them. And even in the second half, I think there was a 20-minute spell where, we had all of the ball and we had all of the possession, and we looked the more likely to go and get the next goal in the game. And then, through, for me, some poor decision making by the manager, we weren't able to create an opportunity, we weren't able to muster a chance, and obviously they ended up getting the equaliser, and that was that. But as I said, these are the types of games, when you are in the type of position that Everton are in, that you simply cannot afford to drop points in. Now, in the grand scheme of things, a point away from home against Nottingham Forest, especially against the Nottingham Forest team who haven't lost in the Premier League at home since October, isn't the worst result in the world. But as I said, when you put it into context and you contextualise the situation that Everton are currently in, and you think about the fact that we were up twice in the game, and you think about the fact that Nottingham Forest aren't a particularly good side, and you think about the whole sort of the premise behind it's not a bad point because we're away from home, only really makes sense if you are winning the home games that you were expected to win. If Everton had beaten Aston Villa last weekend, and Everton had beaten Southampton a couple of weeks ago, and Everton had beaten, Wolves on Boxing Day, and Leicester before the break, and maybe got a point at West Ham, then we'd be here looking, going, it's not a bad point. That, Nottingham Forest away from home, the all right side at home, it's not the worst point in the world. But we've lost all of those games of football that I've just mentioned. We've lost to pretty much every single relegation rival at Goodison Park other than Leeds United. And that, for me, proves two things. One of them is that this isn't a good point away from home, because, as I said, the premise of a good point away from home is, when you are winning your home games and you're winning the games you're expected to win, at home, and then you go away to a difficult ground and you pick up a point. That's a good point away from home. But also, for me, and I'm not going to touch too much on this because it's old news, and I don't really think it needs to be discussed, an awful lot. But it also just highlights how idiotic and once again negligent this board was in keeping Frank Lampard in the job for as long as they did. Because I do firmly believe that had Sean Dyche have been in charge of this team for the games against Southampton, even for the game against Wolves on Boxing Day, which for me, we should have had a new manager because Frank Lampard should have been sacked after the 2 Bournemouth defeats, then I think we'd have won those games, and I think we'd have picked up points in those games, and then we'd be looking at a point away at Forest going, do you know what? That's not actually a bad point, that. But you can't sit here and go, yeah, but it's a decent point because we were away from home, and it's a difficult ground to go to, when you're losing the games at home that you're expected to win. That means that when you go away from home and you are up in the game twice against a team that aren't particularly very good, and you don't come away with a win, I just can't look at that in any positive light whatsoever. I really, really can't. And I look like a ghost at the moment because I forgot to turn my light off, and that's why my hair is disappearing a little bit. Forgot to turn my light on, and that's why my hair is disappearing a little bit, so you'll have to put up with that. But, yeah, I'm just really, really, really disappointed, because it just feels like a wasted opportunity, and I don't think we'll have many of them, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Obviously, we've got games at Goodison Park and games that, Everton will have to give absolutely everything in, and probably rely on the opposition teams being a little bit below par. I'm talking about games against the likes of, Tottenham at Goodison. Obviously, we've got to face Manchester City at Goodison as well. Those are games that Everton could quite easily come away with nothing from. But, yeah, it's these types of games, your games against Nottingham Forest, regardless of whether you're away from home or whether you're at home. Put it this way, if Everton were at Goodison Park on Sunday and it would have been the same result, the same performance, the same outcome, I don't think anybody would be looking at this with any form of positivity whatsoever. I don't think anybody would feel anything other than, 2 dropped points and a massively missed opportunity. And I feel the same with it being away from home. We need to get out of this mentality that because it's away from home, it's not too bad. No. The game and the way in which the game panned out, and the fact that Everton were ahead twice, and the fact Nottingham Forest weren't particularly good, and the fact that once again the goals we conceded were through our own mistakes, all of that adds up to the fact that this is a massively disappointing missed opportunity. Doesn't change because we were 2.5 hours up the motorway. That doesn't change the fact that this game was a massively missed opportunity, and for me, a massively disappointing one, and it piles an immense, and I mean an immense amount of pressure on the game against Brentford on Saturday, which now, look, every game is a must-win. Of course, every game is a must-win, as the manager said, but now this one is one that Everton simply cannot afford to slip up in. We really, really can't, and will we win that game against Brentford at the weekend? Your guess is as good as mine, but we've got to. really, because we had to win that game against Nottingham Forest and we didn't. Before we get into the review and I want to talk about the team news and I want to talk about the goals and I want to talk a little bit more in depth about the game, I felt it was necessary to just touch on something I've read over the last hour or so on social media regarding the state of this football club. So just to remind everybody, Everton are currently sat, and again, I know you don't want to be reminded, but I'm going to remind you, Everton currently sat 18th in the Premier League table, so inside of the relegation zone, on 22 points. We are only a point above Bournemouth and Southampton, who were sat in 20th and 19th respectively, and it has been 26 games played. So Everton have got 12 Premier League games left to play. We are currently sat in the relegation zone. For the second season on the bounce, Everton have been in and around this position, coming to the last sort of 10-15 games of the season. Now, I want to read a tweet out that I've just read myself from the 1878. If you don't know who the 1878 are, they're a fan group who are responsible for a lot of the flags, a lot of the banners that you see inside of Goodison Park, as well as trying to create an atmosphere inside the stadium, trying to effectively make Goodison Park a beer pit and a fortress once again. So the 1878 have just tweeted, "We have asked for a meeting with the club to see what can be done to improve the atmosphere inside Goodison and help the team. The club have refused to deal with the 1878 directly, and we have been asked to go through the fans forum with any ideas we have going forward. We are extremely disappointed in this, as the relationship previously had been fine. However, we have noticed and feel that this has broken down since we signed the open letter regarding change at board level, and most of the group are now active members of the marches." So that tweet in itself there, not that we needed any real sort of not that we needed any real sort of more proof or any more sort of indication that this is the case, but that tweet there pretty much guarantees that the people at the top of this football club, whoever sanctioned that response to the 1878, whoever signed that off, and I dare say whoever's boss it is that, has signed that off, because that will be coming from somebody, but I bet me bottom dollar on whoever has signed that response off to the 1878 has been told what to say by somebody higher up than them. This has once again proven that those people that run our football club and that are in positions of power at our football club, be it board level or below, have absolutely no interest in Everton Football Club, absolutely no interest in Everton improving, in the atmosphere at Goodison improving, in the team improving, in the team being backed by the fans or the team being supported properly by the fans, have no interest in Everton dragging ourselves out of this relegation battle, have no interest in Everton staying in the Premier League, have no interest in creating an atmosphere inside of Goodison, one similar to last season, which we all know was a massive, massive, massive factor as to why Everton are still a Premier League team at this current moment. No interest in any of that whatsoever. They only have an interest in their own agendas and in making themselves look good. That tweet there says in black and white that a fan group have gone to the club and said, "We want to work with you in order to improve the atmosphere within the ground and around the stadium on a match day, to try and get behind these players, to try and see us through this situation, see us out of this situation again." And the club have gone, "Well, actually, we don't really like you because you don't really think that we're good enough, so we're not going to do that." They've put themselves and their own personal agendas ahead of the future of this football club, of our football club. Whoever that is that has signed that letter, you are a fucking disgrace. You are an absolute disgrace. I don't care if it's Bill. I don't care if it's Denise. I don't care if it's the communication fella. I don't care if it's anybody else on the board or anybody below. You are an absolute fucking disgrace. You have got no interest in improving Everton Football Club. You have got no interest in Everton staying in the Premier League. The only interest you have is in your own personal agenda. You are selfish. You are an this football club. It is as simple as that. It's plain and simple in broad daylight. right. It effectively says, well, we could do that to help the atmosphere, but you don't really believe that we're good enough, so we're not going to do that. Instead of saying, regardless of what you think on us, we actually agree the atmosphere does need to improve inside the stadium, so we'll work with you on that. Because the atmosphere does need to improve inside the stadium, and we do need to get behind these players, and we do need to get behind this manager, and we do need to try and drag these players out of this situation again. Should we have to do that? Absolutely not. But because these absolute useless, negligent knobheads are still at this football club, we've got to do that. But these useless, absolute criminals have said, actually, no, we're not going to participate in that because you don't really like us. It's petty, it's childish, it's embarrassing, and it comes from people that are in charge of a Premier League football club, a Premier League football club that has won multiple league titles, multiple FA Cups, European success, one of the biggest football clubs and most historic football clubs on the face of this earth, not just England, on the face of this earth, and the people running it are petty, childish knobheads. Absolute disgrace. And if you actually have been to Goodison over the course of the last, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is, you will have noticed that there's not many flags. The only flags that are there are ones that are being brought in by fans for separate, for different supporters, clubs, or for whatever. You don't see the Jordan Pickford flag anymore. Why didn't we see that last week when we played Aston Villa, considering Jordan Pickford's just signed a new contract? You don't see the flag with Howard Kendall on. You don't see the flag with the Holy Trinity on. You don't see any of that anymore. Why? Because the people at the football club that can communicate with fans to make that happen aren't interested in it anymore, because they understand that they're not good enough to do the job. And instead of saying, actually, do you know what, we're not really, at this point, it's not about us, it's about the football club, so let's just put this to one side and do what's best for the football club. No, they're only interested in doing what's best for themselves. So that says all you need to know about these people in charge. And I would absolutely love to know who signed off that response to the 1878. I would love to know. We'll never find out because they'll go in hiding and you'll never find out who it is because they don't want to come out and admit it. But how, whoever that is, how can they come out, respond in that way, and then try and blag that they have Everton's best interest at heart, or they have the best interest of this football club at heart? No, what they have at heart is their interest of continuing to earn hundreds of thousands of pounds a month, millions of pounds a year, to do quite possibly the shittest job they could do. That's their only interest. I want to still be paid millions of pounds a year to be fucking woeful at my job. That's all it is. They're an absolute disgrace. And listen, I could sit here and I could talk about the people in charge and the board and how just absolutely dreadful these people are at their jobs all day long. It's not about that, this video. This is about the results and the performance and trying to, constructively break it down and, have some form of constructive opinion on what this game was. But I felt like that needed to be said because that today has made me feel sick. Reading that and seeing that today has made me feel absolutely sick to my stomach. It's a disgrace. It's an utter disgrace. Anyway, there you go. I just thought I'd have me say on that because, yeah, it's disgusting. It's disgraceful. But anyway, back onto the performance, back onto the game. So, yeah, like I said, for me, I personally just can't be anything other than disappointed at this one. I know some people will say, oh, you've got to look at it positively and it's a good point and this, that and the other. But the reality is this would have been a 3 points that would have taken us out of the relegation zone for a start. It would have been a 3 points that would have ragged Nottingham Forest back into the conversation for relegation. So it would have dragged another team into that conversation and again, maybe piled a little bit of pressure onto them and a little bit of pressure onto their situation. It would have been massive. It would have taken Everton to 24 points, which would have seen us just below Leicester in 16th, above West Ham and above Leeds United. And as I said, it would have pulled Nottingham Forest straight back into it because they'd have only been on 25 points as well. So the fact that we managed to, you know, to throw that twice, and we did throw it twice because, effectively both goals come from mistakes of our own, is disappointing. Really, really, really disappointing. As I said, the manager started with a little bit of a changed team, going with Demarai Gray up front. Obviously, clearly understanding that Neil Maupay and Ellis Sims haven't been good enough recently, or haven't shown enough recently to keep their place, or to want a place. He went with Demarai Gray up front. Demarai Gray, obviously, somebody that a lot of fans have been, asking to play and asking to get more game time. For obvious reasons, he's our top goal scorer, and whilst he mightn't be very consistent, and whilst he mightn't be, somebody you can rely on every week, he's definitely our biggest goal threat at the moment. He played up front on his own. I personally would have had him on the right hand side, and maybe had somebody who's a bit more of a natural striker up front. Maybe an Ellis Sims, etc. But obviously, I had no big issue with Demarai Gray starting up front, because it's not like, Neil Maupay hasn't had a chance, or Ellis Sims has shown he's particularly good enough. Michael Keane remained in the side. Again, I really struggle to understand why Michael Keane is getting picked in this Everton team, other than the fact that the manager likes him because he's managed them before and he has a personal relationship with him. Other than that, I'm not entirely sure as to why Michael Keane is being picked, but there you go, he is being picked. Of course, we've seen Ben Godfrey in at left back. Again, a decision that I wanted to see, but it wasn't through a choice. It was more through force, because Vitaly Mykolenko was unavailable due to a sickness. James Garner returned to the bench, which provided us with a little bit of hope that we might get to see him. And yeah, everything else stayed the same, and I actually think Everton started the game really, really brightly. I think Everton started the game really positively. I think we were on the front foot. I think we were getting at Nottingham Forest, and we looked confident. It looked like a team that were going out there to win the game. It looked like a team that were going out there to put it to Nottingham Forest, and to ultimately get something out of the game, as opposed to the typical sort of sit back because we're away from home and try and see a game out and try and grab a point or whatever. Again, a really positive start. We start the game really well. A couple of half opportunities, find ourselves in good areas. The crowd is starting to lift a little bit. Forest looked really, really shaky from the start. They looked really, really, sort of, I wouldn't say worried, but they were panicking every time they were on the ball. They were putting the ball out of play. They were misplacing passes. I thought Dwight McNeil was absolutely fantastic in the opening 20-25 minutes. He was constantly on their toes. He was constantly winning the ball back. He was moving it. He was, he was involved constantly. He wasn't hiding away from the play. And whilst he wasn't doing an awful lot with the ball, he also wasn't hiding away from the ball either. Then we get the penalty. Nice bit of play. Nice bit of quick feet by Dwight McNeil. He gets taken down. Clear penalty. As clear as you'll likely see. McNeil goes down, Gray steps up, brilliantly, well taken penalty, and all of a sudden Everton are 1-0 up away from home, and you're sort of thinking, right, okay, early on, really, really, really early on, of course, in the game, but we're 1-0 up. Can we hold on? Can we sort of try and get this to half time? 10 minutes in, let's not make any silly mistakes. Let's not give anything away. Let's not allow these back into the game, when they're not really doing anything to suggest that they're going to get back into the game. Let's just keep it calm, keep our heads, and continue to press them and go again. And that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see Everton get the ball and go again, go and get a second, go and try and get a third. Don't give them a minute to sort of think we can get back in this game. Just keep pressing them, and we did, I suppose. We didn't resort to the let's sit back and throw everybody behind the ball. We did try and pick ourselves up. We did try and go again. We did try and, pile pressure on them. It ultimately come back to bite us in the arse, because less than 10 minutes later, Michael Keane has completely exposed himself. Morgan Gibbs-White firstly is being allowed to run through the entire midfield with absolutely nobody anywhere near him. And don't get me wrong, I thought Morgan Gibbs-White had a good game the other day. Thought he was really impressive, to be honest with you, which is ironic considering I wasn't massively keen on him when Everton would link with him in the summer. But I thought he was really impressive, picking the ball up, driving with it, moving it, and just sort of he gave our midfield a really, really difficult afternoon. And don't get me wrong, I don't think our midfield was particularly good on Sunday afternoon. I think Onana had his worst game in an Everton shirt for a while. I don't think Decore was particularly great, although he got a goal. And Garner played well, to be fair. But, that's 1 out of 3. And I thought their midfield were much more cohesive and much more impressive. Morgan Gibbs-White is allowed to run all the way through the middle of the pitch, takes a shot. Jordan makes a good save, unfortunately bats it into the path of Brennan Johnson, who scores pretty much a carbon copy, to the goal that he scored at Goodison Park not so long ago, earlier on in the season. And all of a sudden it's 1-1, and you're thinking, again, it's through a mistake of our own. Again, it's through our own doing. We were 1-0 up, and I don't want to say we were cruising because it was only early on in the game, but we looked like, we'd had a really positive start. We looked a better team. We looked like, we could go and maybe put a little bit of pressure under them and, try and get back in the game, try and ultimately go and kill the game off relatively early and come away with what would have been a really, really, really big 3 points. But we don't, we concede. And then you're sort of thinking, well, is it now going to be a case of Nottingham Forest get a bit of confidence because their crowd lifted an awful lot and their crowd started to, obviously get behind them and sort of back the fact that they got back in the game. And I was sort of standing there thinking, are we now going to see a sort of barrage of Forest attacks that Everton are going to have to sort of defend and try and sort of keep out? But we didn't. We responded really, really well. As soon as they scored, okay, they had a period of, a couple of minutes where their fans were on top and they were looking confident and they were, trying to move the ball well. But pretty much instantly, we got control of it again. We were moving it forward. We were threatening again. We actually looked, once again, like the much better team. We actually looked like the team much more in control. And then, not so long later, 10 minutes later, we go and get the second goal. Big ball up by Tarkowski, I think it was. Michael Keane actually gets the flick on. Maybe Michael Keane would be more useful as a creative midfielder, to be honest with you, because he's not very useful as a centre-half at the moment, but maybe as a creative midfielder, he'd actually be somewhat of useful. But Michael Keane gets the flick on, and there's Abdoulaye Doucouré on the end of it, knocks the ball into the back of the net, and all of a sudden we're 2-1 up. And I was really impressed at this point because it was the first time I'd watched Everton, not just away from home, including home games as well, concede a goal and then not sort of let our heads drop, not sort of dilly-dally and dwell on it and worry about it and complain about it, just pick themselves back up and go, right, we're going again, because the first 10 minutes of this game we were really good. We've let one go, we'll pick ourselves up, we'll go again. And we did that, and we went and we got the second, and it was like, okay, this is positive. And obviously, when you're 2-1 up, you're always vulnerable, and you're always aiming to try and get that third goal and to try and kill the game off ultimately. And I thought for the rest of the first half, Everton were quite impressive. We should have had another penalty. I haven't seen it again, but from what I've read, so I can't categorically say we should have had it because I haven't seen it again, and I've got no interest in watching it again because I can't be arsed reliving this game. But from what I'm seeing a lot of people on social media saying, Coleman was kicked at the back of the foot. I think I've even seen somebody to do with the referees come out and say that it should have been another penalty. But nevertheless, we were getting forward. We were getting chances. McNeil was moving the ball well. Gray was busy with the ball at his feet as well. We were pushing. Now, what become really apparent in that final sort of 20 minutes of the first half when we went 1-0 up and Nottingham Forest weren't really doing anything, what become really apparent was our distinct lack of creativity and our distinct lack of goals. Had we have had somebody that was able to create and then able to score, I think we'd have won that game comfortably, because it was that period in those final sort of 12 minutes those final 20 minutes of the first half, it's that period when you're 2-1 up, the opposition team are against the ropes a little bit, their confidence is low. That's when you need to go and kill that game off. That's when you need to go and get your third, and then come out in the second half, defend, soak up their spell of 10-15 minutes that they'd have at the start of the second half, go and get another and kill the game off completely. But Everton just haven't got the quality or the ability up front to be able to do that. And that showed in that final 20 minutes of the first half. We huffed and puffed a little bit. We had a couple of half opportunities, moved the ball well into the areas a couple of times, but we never had anybody there to convert. We never had anybody there to get on the end of a cross, or anybody there to make the overlap and run and get behind the defenders. And ultimately we go in at half time 2-1 up, and it's a good positive half. Forest, don't get me wrong, have had a couple of moments where you've gone, oh shit, that was a little bit close, but generally Everton have been the team on top, and generally Everton have been the team that have looked like scoring again. And then I just think we approached the second half wrong. I think the manager, I don't know whether it was the instruction or whether this just naturally was what the players decided to do, but I think there was naturally sort of a sit-back mentality and try and see the game out. And whilst had Abdoulaye Doucouré not made the mistake, we may well have done that. I think it was disappointing to not see us go for the jugular a little bit more. And look, maybe I'm contradicting myself, because I've just sat there and said for the last 20 minutes of the first half, we huffed and puffed and we tried, but we never really had anybody in there with the quality to go and get that winning goal, or that sort of game-ending goal, the killer goal, if you like. So maybe it's a bit contradictory for me to sit here and say we should have gone at them again in the second half. But I just think a couple of things. I think we were a little bit too reserved in the second half and invited them on a little bit more. And I also don't think the substitutes were made at the right time, and I don't think they were the right substitutes. Now, I understand people saying, what's Dyche meant to do? What are the options he's got? He's got no options on the bench. The players on the bench aren't good enough, etc., etc. I get all of that. The reality is that you could clearly see from 65 minutes on, Amadou Onana was absolutely useless and was doing nothing. Iwobi was massively flagging. Demarai Gray was massively flagging. A lot of those players were tired, and Forest made a couple of changes. 3 changes they made. They brought on Dennis, Ayew and somebody else, and whilst those players mightn't be unbelievably talented footballers that we all sit here and go, oh my god, they're guaranteed to come on and and get something out of this game for them, they were fresh legs. They were players that could come on, that could run around, and that could ultimately put a little bit of pressure on Everton. And we didn't have that. We didn't make a substitute until they scored, and we brought on Neil Maupay and Tom Davies, who've got a combined pace of my nan. So that is the problem for me. And whilst that I appreciate that there's not many options off the bench for somebody like Sean Dyche to bring on, I just look at Tom Davies and think, well, if you're going to bring Tom Davies on, then why not bring James Garner on, who's on the bench? And I look at Neil Maupay and say, well, if you're going to bring Neil Maupay on, then why not bring Ellis Sims on, who's on the bench? There was a couple of moments in that second half where we had the ball in promising areas, we had the ball in forward areas, even in those spells where we were tired and when we looked lackadaisical and when we looked a bit lethargic and when we looked a bit down, there were still moments in those moments where we had the ball in a crossing position, but it was Demarai Gray who had the ball in a crossing position and he was looking into the centre and there was nobody there to put it away. Or we'd have the ball in a really good promising position and all of our players would be wide and the midfielders would have no energy to get forward to try and help out. And there was one that stood out really well because it was right in front of us where Demarai Gray took the ball to the corner in the 75th minute because there was nobody in the box, because he should have been in the box because he was the striker, but he was the only one that picked the ball up and drove into that wide area. Now, I remember sitting there watching it thinking, why hasn't Dyche brought on an Ellis Sims and just said, you stand there, you don't do anything other than stand in that 6-yard box, and you just give one of these wingers, a McNeil or a Gray, the option to hit if they've got the ball in that area. And you just stand there, and if a ball comes into you, you jump and you get a connection on it. But there was nobody in the box, and it meant that Forest again, I think, was sort of looking in that final 20 minutes thinking, hang on, these are pushing for another goal, but they've not got anything left in the tank. They've not got anything left. But, Forest weren't great. It's not like Forest turned it up a gear and then absolutely blew us away. They also looked like they had very little in the tank, they also looked like they had very little quality. And once again, and this is the most frustrating thing for me, we've gifted them a goal once again. I don't think the first one is as bad, the first goal we conceded. Yes, it's a Michael Keane mistake, but I don't think it's a case of it being gifted to them. I think it's just a case of poor positioning by Michael Keane, which is something I've said many a times on this channel. The second goal was atrocious because it's once again an individual mistake. You know, you've got 12 minutes to go in the game. You're tired and you know the manager's not got much confidence in the team. Just don't do anything stupid. Don't make any stupid mistake. Don't do anything that is going to, in any way, shape or form, put you under any pressure. And the minute Abdoulaye Doucouré made that mistake, by the way, I knew it was a goal. The second he gave that ball away, I knew it was a goal because about 4 of our players, including the other 2 midfielders, had ran past them. So there was nobody back. So it was then just 3 Forest players running at our attack. Brennan Johnson stood on his own in the box. You know, he hits it with his left foot, and whilst it's an absolutely fantastic finish, it's a finish you would absolutely expect a Premier League footballer to be able to take, and that's exactly what he did. And that, for me, is the massively disappointing thing, is that we were ahead twice. They aren't very good. They weren't very good. They didn't have very much. But we still didn't manage to win the game because of our own individual errors and a lack of any football knowledge. That's what it is. I don't think we've got a particularly awful team in terms of football and ability. I just don't think there's many good football and brains in our team. And players have proven that week in, week out, and that's another example of it. If Abdoulaye Doucouré's got a better football and brain, he knows to not make that decision. He knows to not try that pass. But he does, and we end up conceding for it. And whilst he scored in the first half, it's written off because, you know, we've dropped points in what should have been a game we won and would have been a really, really important game. But yeah, there you go. Look, I am going to leave it there. Short and sweet for this one. And you know, again, I know there was 4 goals, but other than that, there wasn't an awful lot that happened for half an hour in the second half. Absolutely nothing happened. But I've got a couple of bits on tonight, so I'm going to have to dart. Yeah, I suppose all we have to do now is move on from it, look to the future, and look forward to Brentford on Saturday, where hopefully we can get something out of that game. But yeah, until then, if you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. It does only take a second, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. We'll be back over the next couple of days, so look out for those. If you're watching the YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below. Big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you later.